Can you move ahead with that second wave of tariffs if we're in a caretaker government because of an election campaign, or does it have to wait?
Of course, because ultimately we are the government, and ultimately our job is to defend the national interest of Canadians. And that's what we'll do. And that's why we've put everything in the window to make sure that we would be able to do so.
All this talk that Donald Trump has been doing and Americans have been doing about annexing Canada isn't really working in the way that they want. In fact, it's having an opposite effect. It's putting a significant amount of harm on Canadian politics, for one. That's my takeaway. Seeing the rise of patriotism from the Liberals is kind of hurting the chance at Conservatives forming a majority government or potentially even winning this upcoming election. The polls are very messy. The poly market betting is very messy, and we just don't really know until we actually go to vote. But putting that aside, another crazy story that we're talking about is joining Europe. So our Canadian politicians do not want to join America. They don't want to be the 51st state. Most Canadian politicians don't even want to entertain the idea of an economic merger, even though that was Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary's suggestion. Instead, you have the Liberals are flocking to Europe to join the European Union, but particularly the defense, from the defense aspect, a merger of sorts. So yeah, kind of weird. I don't want to be a part of Europe. I don't want to have anything to do with the European Union. That's kind of where like the World Economic Forum is kind of a hub. A lot of countries in Europe have carbon taxes and stuff like that. I just don't want to be a part of that. If you had to pick, obviously Canada keeping its sovereignty, 51st state would be right behind, and Europe would be literally the last option. So we're taking a look at some of these topics in this video this morning. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting off with recent comments that President Trump made.
With a snap election looming, observers say this is an endorsement no candidate wants.
With Canada and the U.S. locked in a trade war, Donald Trump weighed in on who he wants to negotiate with.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a Liberal.
There was no response from the Prime Minister's office. Mark Carney spent most of the day in closed-door meetings, but his Conservative opponent addressed it within the opening minutes of his news conference in Sudbury.
It's clear that President Trump wants the Liberals in power because they will keep this country weak.
Some analysts say Trump's comments will help Pierre Poilievre fight back against Liberal attack ads like this one.
Everything is broken.
Everything is broken.
Yes, they're trying to compare Pierre to MAGA, right? Which is the whole thing about Maple MAGA, but I don't see how that is hurting Pierre, and I don't think that President Trump saying that the conservative leader, he was referring to Pierre, we all know who's referring to Pierre, stupidly said stupid things about him, and he stupidly is on the wrong side. So I think that it very much backfired.
The Liberal campaign is looking to make any link they can between Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Trump, as are a number of third-party organizations right now. And this undermines all of that.
Since this November meeting in Mar-a-Lago, Trump has been talking about turning Canada into the 51st state. Before launching a trade war earlier this month, Trump spoke about using economic force against Canada. Although Canadian politicians have talked about toning down the rhetoric over tariffs, Trump is not doing the same.
They give us nothing, and they are the worst people to negotiate with.
Canada has retaliated against Trump's 25% tariffs, but the White House is expected to put more protectionist measures in within weeks.
It doesn't matter who's sitting in the Prime Minister's office up in Ottawa. The Trump administration is still going to have complaints about the United States' trade relationship with Canada being unbalanced from their perspective.
I do personally think that Pierre Poilievre is a tougher opponent to go up against from Trump's perspective. I do think that there's a little bit more negotiation room and leeway with liberals. And so that's kind of what the comment was referring to, in my opinion. He doesn't want to deal with hard-headed people, stubborn Canada first, super proud patriots in Canada like Pierre. He would rather deal with a malleable, flexible little cuck like Mark Carney. So I don't know. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. We're just going to have to wait and see when it comes time to vote, which seems like it's going to be sooner than later. And then we've got this video here that talks about this interesting ban that Pierre Poilievre has done with media and how that's going to impact the election campaign. He's basically put a ban on media joining his campaign.
It's very interesting because I think that the politicians in general, and maybe the conservatives in particular, want to have more control over the message that the news media puts out. And they're worried, I'm sure, a little bit about misspeaking, someone leaking something, a political advisor saying something off the record that he or she should not. And this is a way in which the parties, over the years, this is not a new thing, but they've tried increasingly to keep a tight leash on the daily information that comes out so that they are not caught off guard. I think this is one way of ratcheting up the tension between the media and the party. And frankly, I think they're playing a little bit of an American style of keeping the media at distance so that they get the right message, or what they consider to be the right message, out on a daily and even hourly basis.
And you think this is problematic in terms of the media being able to properly cover a campaign that spans a very big country that can go from, Halifax to Vancouver in the space of a day with stops here and there in many different ridings and kind of outside major cities, of course, in rural areas of the country?
So Pierre Poilievre has taken this very different approach to media in Canada, right? He's opened up the floor for questions when reporters ask him, and he actually prioritizes independent media like True North or Juno News, Rebel News, and things like that. And I'm sure if creators were to show up and ask him questions, influencers or whatever, that he would probably take that as well. They wouldn't have to be a part of any singular, network per se. That's my guess. I don't actually know if that's true or not, but I'm just assuming. But what Pierre hasn't done is he's not going on podcasts. He's not doing interviews with people. He's just opened up the floor to questions. And this, sparks a whole debate that big podcaster in America, Patrick Bet-David, brought to the table, that Pierre Poilievre is in this to win, but he's not taking the appropriate action by doing a massive social media tour and going on a bunch of different people's podcasts or YouTube channels for discussions and for free promotion, basically. And that's something that I think that Pierre's dropping the ball on. Maybe that changes when it gets into the actual election period, but I kind of highly doubt that. And that's one thing that I don't really like about the conservative tactics right now. At least Justin Trudeau had some balls to go on podcasts, but again, I don't know. They're just trying to play it safe, overly safe, I think. They're being a little bit too safe.
I'm not sure the parties are terribly concerned about the logistics as they affect media organizations. They are more interested in getting their message out on social media rather than on mainstream media. And I think that this plays absolutely into the hands of the control freaks inside the parties.
Yeah, see, I kind of disagree with that statement. I do agree that Pierre has utilized his own social media and the social media accounts of other conservative MPs, but again, he's not doing social media rounds. Yes, he's spoken with Jordan Peterson. That's a super safe podcast to go on. The guy is so well known. He's been on Joe Rogan, right? But again, like, he hasn't done any other Canadian podcasts, right? Whether it's your favorite YouTube channels out there, similar channels like this, there's a dozen at least, right, to mention in the Canadian space. He hasn't done any, and it's a little bit disappointing. I don't think I'm the only one who says that. I would like to see him do more in that regard.
What do you make of whether or not it is right for democracy in terms of a free media being able to kind of cover whatever the party is, whoever the leader is of all political stripes, being able to kind of do that job? And again, it is the media themselves that pay for the space on the plane, on the bus. It's not any party in particular.
It is the fact that media organizations are looking for ways in which they can report on how the party leaders express themselves on an ongoing basis. And we saw that Prime Minister Carney had a little bit of a ruffle with some of the media people in London, where he was accused of being sort of chippy with the media. That's exactly the sort of thing that the parties want to avoid. So they want to be really careful about what is said in front of an open microphone. The questions that will be asked of the leaders will be repeated questions.
If you're leading a country, people should be able to ask you questions, and it should be able to be off the dome. I don't say, like, you're leading a country, you're dealing with security codes, you're dealing with national security all the time, and you're afraid of questions on an open microphone. Like, Mark Carney really messed up with that, where he tried to muzzle Rosemary Barton, or whatever the hell her name is, right, working for the CBC or whatever the hell network she works for. I don't even care who she works for, but we all know who I'm talking about, right? That was a really piss poor judgment call by Prime Minister Carney, and I hope I don't see the same thing with the Conservatives. I really don't. If you are afraid to be asked questions as a leader of the country, then you have no business being the leader. Like, there's malicious questions to be asked, but nothing that we've seen has been malicious at all. It's just been catching them off guard with, and then, little temper tantrums that are thrown. So something to very much consider for Pierre Poilievre and his team as we head into this election campaign season. Now we're going to take a look here at, she's known as Justin Trudeau's mistress, Mélanie Joly, but I guess that's irrelevant now. Who's Trudeau? Never heard of her. So let's take a look here at this video of what the defense is going to look like with Canada and European Union, apparently.
Okay, we begin in Washington, where President Donald Trump is uttering more threats against Canada and talking about who should run Canada. The CBC's Richard Madden is on this. He joins us from Washington, D.C. live. Richard, this all happened on Fox News because of course. So let's start with what Trump is saying about Canada's political leaders.
Yeah, hey, David. Well, we've heard President Trump use Canada as a punching bag, but I think this is the first time we've seen him and heard him fully inject himself into Canadian politics. Now, Fox News host Laura Ingraham was delicately trying to press him on how his hostilities towards Canada are actually helping the Liberals. We've seen polls showing the Liberals rebounding from the once double-digit lead held by the Conservatives. And take a listen to how Trump responded.
The Liberal Party is going to win now in the next election, most likely. And they were down and out. Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a liberal than a
for China closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The Conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal actually with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
So, yeah, that was stunning. Now, David, we've heard other members of Trump's cabinet accuse the Liberals of using Trump's tariffs for their own political gain. But clearly, the White House and the administration are doing it too. Some of my political contacts here have mused that Trump's strategy to weigh in on Canadian politics is a way to juice up his own base because it's a lot easier to attack a Liberal than a Conservative. Now, I should also mention, not everyone in the MAGA base is buying it. We heard radio host Joe Rogan recently calling Trump's attacks against Canada ridiculous, and we've seen other Republicans kind of sloughing it off. But the fact that Trump is now weighing in on Canada's pending election is likely another factor the leaders up there are using to their advantage, and you played some of it just moments ago.
Yeah, it's interesting here that the Fox News decision desk is predicting a Liberal victory on election night when we don't even know the date. But, you know, Trump also, he's, again, Richard, talking about Canada becoming the...
What a stupid little passive-aggressive comment. Like, we've seen the polls. CBC has talked about how Mark Carney has this alleged lead over Pierre, and then Fox News regurgitates the same thing, and they're like, oh, wow, of course that's what Fox is saying. Come on, man, make up your mind. Fox News literally agreed with what you guys have been saying.
The 51st state. I mean, he said this more than once in the interview. What stood out this particular time?
Yeah, and also look at the betting markets too, because those movements, those have had some movements too. You know, as for this 51st state, you know, we've heard this before. It's gone from trolling, but now, is Trump serious? We heard how Trump say he would use economic force against Canada, and these tariffs are likely the starting point. But once again, host Laura Ingraham gently pushed Trump on why he has it out for Canada, and here's how he responded. Listen.
Look, I deal with every country, indirectly or directly. One of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. They make a lot of millions of automobiles are sent in. I'd rather have them made in Michigan. I'd rather have them made in South Carolina or any one of our...
You're tougher with Canada than you are with some of our biggest adversaries.
Only because it's meant to be our 51st state.
So Canada, nastier than, I don't know, North Korea, Iran, like actual adversaries. So that was stunning as well. But we are seeing Trump really escalating his harsh rhetoric and hostilities against Canada. So that said, I wouldn't be surprised if we'll hear more of this annexation talk and trashing Canada in the middle of the campaign once Canada's election gets underway up there.
Yeah, it's going to be soon. It's a wild election coming. All right, Richard, thank you so much. This is CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been quick to use U.S. President Trump's latest comments about the Liberals against them.
Of course.
Today, Poilievre said that Trump endorsed Liberal leader Mark
Lots
Carney
of people have.
and agreed that a Liberal would be easier for Trump to deal with.
That's not at all what happened.
It's true. I'm a strong leader. I'm a tough guy to deal with. I'm firm in my convictions, and I'll always put Canada first. By contrast, in 10 years, the Liberals have blocked resource projects, hiked taxes, and driven $500 billion of investment to the U.S.
Minister of Foreign Affairs Melanie.
I know it probably feels from the viewer's perspective that I've been really ripping into Pierre Poilievre, and some people have, you know, just there's a lot of conspiracies out there. Look, I like Pierre. I want Pierre to win. I am pro-conservative party, but some of the things that he says and does is just so freaking ridiculous. I'm a tough guy. That's why Trump doesn't want me, because that's right. I'm a strong and tough guy. Man, that's the same thing that Chrystia Freeland said, just in a higher pitch, because Donald Trump last term called her the killer. Oh, that girl, she's the killer. And she's like, see, Mr. Speaker, I'm super tough. Trump doesn't want to deal with me, right? You remember that? Of course you do. You watch the news, you pay attention, you watch the videos, you like and subscribe to this channel. Of course you've heard her say that. And it's freaking ridiculous when she says it, not because of the squeaky Mickey Mouse voice, but because of puffing yourself up like that. Of I'm a tough guy. Like, come on, Pierre, what are you doing? Why are you saying that? It's weird.
Jolie joins me now. Minister, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good to see you.
You've heard what Donald Trump had to say.
Mark Carney's mistress. Trudeau's mistress, allegedly.
As he called him, than the conservative. I mean, that sounds like the president thinks your government will be easier to deal with than a conservative government. What do you think?
Well, my job is not to comment on what President Trump prefers. My job is to say what I think Canadians prefer. And what they prefer is actually an adult in the room to deal with a president that can be sometimes very unpredictable, and that a president that has been stating that he would annex Canada, and also a president that has been clear in terms of imposing unjustifiable and of course unjustified tariffs against us. So I think that the rhetoric that Poilievre is using right now just doesn't stand. And I don't think it has any credibility in the eyes of Canadians.
But when the president says, I think the Liberal will be easier to deal with, what do you think Canadians infer from that?
I think our job right now is to defend Canadian jobs and Canadian way of life. It's clearly not to have somebody that mimics President Trump. and has been mimicking a lot of the MAGA movement for too many years. And that has been creating a lot of frustration also amongst Canadians that are worried that what is happening south of the border will happen now in Canada. So I think at the end of the day, when election starts, and they will start at one point, the question will be who can handle better the Canada-US relationship. And I think we've been showing steady leadership on it, steadfast support towards Canadians. And I think that the country is united. And to be frank, I think that if you forget politics just a second, and I know this show is called Power and Politics, Canadians just want us to be doing the work to make sure that they're safe, that they have a job, and
so great self-awareness. That's a great observation of what people want. However, you people, I'm pulling a Don Cherry. You people, and they should bring back Don Cherry, right? That's not to be disrespectful. I genuinely think they should bring back Don Cherry and fully apologize. What they did to that man is disgusting. You people, the Liberals of Canada, have been screwing the pooch for 10 years. And you're saying that people in this country just want results. They just want things to happen. You were under Trudeau and now you're under Carney. What the hell are you going to do different? Like, Justin Trudeau was the main puppet, the prime minister, but the prime minister doesn't get stuff done all the time. Like, there's a whole ecosystem that revolves around him, and it's supposed to be a fluid, well-oiled machine, not gender fluid, but a well-oiled machine. And that hasn't been the case. So the fact that you're at least have the awareness to realize that Canadians just want shit to get done. In fact, I'm going to go out, I'm going to one-up you, and I'm going to say Canadians want freaking politics and the news to be boring. We don't want it to be nail-biting every day. What scandal next? How many billions are we giving away? Oh my God, interest rates, this, and then inflation. We don't want that, man. We've lived through stress for 10 years. It feels like 30 years of stress when you bunch in COVID. Like, it's insane, man. You people have not done the job in 10 years. How many more years do you need? But they'll get it right this time, right? That's their campaign. They'll get it right this time. If we get a liberal government again, this country, block your ears if you don't want me to swear, this country is fucked. Like, just so hard. Oh my goodness. I think millions of people are going to leave and flee to America and seek asylum.
That ultimately Canada is well protected. And I hear so much anxiety across the country and so many people that are worried. Well, we're there, we're doing the job, and we'll continue to do the job.
Okay, well, it sounds like election, though, is coming very soon. We showed a picture earlier in the show. I think you might have still been in the
on Sunday, it's going to be called.
It's being wrapped up and prepped in a garage in Mississauga. So that tells us it's coming soon. The other thing that's coming soon is the April 2nd reciprocal tariff deadline in the United States, right? Yeah. So we've heard from cabinet representatives in the United States saying they're going to put those tariffs in place, and then countries can sort of bargain trade-offs, essentially, to have them come down. How does the government of Canada do that if we're in the middle of an election campaign on the 2nd of April?
First and foremost, we will be ready. So we've said already that we would be imposing tariffs counter tariffs against the tariffs imposed on us. We've already imposed $60 billion worth of tariffs. We already said also that there was $100 billion more that we were ready, that we were putting in the window, and there's already consultations that are happening as we speak on it. So we've done the work. Meanwhile, we've said we would be there for workers. So we'll make sure that workers are well supported. And meanwhile, we will continue to engage with the U.S. administration. I was with Secretary of State Rubio last week. I've been in contact with him over the weekend, and I'll continue to engage. And I was on the phone with Lindsey Graham this morning. And, I know that my colleagues are also in contact with key interlocutors within the Trump administration. We are doing the job.
But the $125 billion, the second tranche of the tariffs that were announced by the former prime minister, they're on hold right now because of the pause on some of the tariffs from President Trump. If we get to a point, though, in April, when the pause comes off or the reciprocal tariffs go in, can you move ahead with that second wave of tariffs if we're in a caretaker government because of an election campaign, or does it have to wait?
Of course, because ultimately we are the government, and ultimately our job is to defend the national interest of Canadians. And that's what we'll do. And that's why we've put everything in the window to make sure that we would be able to do so. We know what are the dates. We knew that, there was the first executive order linked to fentanyl, which was, we all know, a bogus argument to impose 25% tariffs on our goods. Now, we've been able to pause a part of it. And meanwhile, we knew that the steel and aluminum sector would be targeted, not only the Canadian one, but also around the world. So we work with our European friends on the other side of the Atlantic to make sure we would have countermeasures, counter tariffs together. That's what we did. And there will be more to announce before the end of the week, because ultimately, and I've been saying that in every single interview, David, we need to win the hearts and minds of American people right now. We're seeing that it is having an impact. Americans are preoccupied. They know that this is costing more for them at the pump, at the grocery store, or just generally when they buy a house or they want to do renovations. And so this affordability issue that we're seeing also in the US is gaining grounds, and we need to make sure that we have the American people saying to their House representatives, their senators, their governors, ultimately the Trump administration, it's enough.
So more to announce by the end of the week, as in more retaliatory measures to the U.S. or more supports for Canadian workers? It just wasn't quite clear what you meant there.
More to do to make sure that Americans know what President Trump is doing, and I'll keep that.
Okay, it's like a communications effort? Is that what
you're... more to say.
Okay, all right. Well, all right. Trump had more to say last night about Canada becoming a 51st state, which I know Prime Minister Carney has said that's the kind of thing that needs to stop before they'll sit down and have a proper conversation about things. One of the issues he talks about is military spending. There's reporting in the New York Times saying that Canada is prepared to join the European Union in a military industry buildup.
No.
Essentially forming a defense partnership where Canadian get access to the European market and back and forth.
You have to travel across an ocean to get to Europe, yet you can literally walk to America depending where you are in Canada. What the hell is going on? Why are they even entertaining this? And how are Liberal supporters going, yeah, let's join the European Union? Like, that's the most ridiculous thing. And that's not me suggesting the opposite, where we join America and be the 51st state. But you're talking about these defense mergers with the European Union. Why not do that with America? Like, is America so radioactive and so bad, and Trump is just the freaking devil to these people, that they would literally go across the ocean than to deal with him? Am I missing something? Did I get bonked on the head or something, and now I just don't understand what the hell's going on? Because none of this makes any sense to me. I consider myself pretty freaking centrist, man, and this just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
How serious is that? How advanced are those talks?
This is very serious. We've been in talks with the European Union to make sure that we can defense procurement together. We already have a free trade agreement with the European Union. Our ambassador at the European Union, Eilish Campbell, has been in close contact with also Ursula von der Leyen, so the president of the European team. I went a month ago to Europe to make sure that we could be part of that partnership. Former Prime Minister Trudeau did so at the time, and I think it's yielding towards good news, because ultimately we need to make sure that we can be closer to the Europeans as we're developing new partnerships. And we know that we're over-reliant right now on the U.S., on different aspects of our relationship, including defense procurement. And so that was part of my conversations also at the G7 last week when I was with the different foreign ministers of the EU.
When Bill Blair was here on Friday, and he said that in his first meeting with Mark Carney after they were all sworn in, that the Prime Minister asked him to review the F-35 contract.
Yeah, I was in that meeting.
So is this part of that looking to Europe maybe for Saab Gripens instead of buying all the F-35s? Is this the sort of thing we're talking about, or is this in another path for other purchases?
I have too much respect for my fantastic colleague, Minister of Defense Bill Blair, to answer that question for him. But what I can tell you, though, is that we need to be able to have many options. And so I won't comment on what he has said regarding the F-35s, because I think it was a sound decision for the Prime Minister to ultimately ask for a review. But meanwhile, the defense industry here at home needs to be built. We need to work on our own defense industry, and we need to find different partners around the world.
But it is difficult to contemplate Canada buying military hardware for its national security from a country where the leadership is openly talking about annexation. I mean, do you still believe, does Prime Minister Carney believe, as Prime Minister Trudeau has suggested, that annexation is still the ultimate goal here?
We've said it many times that we think it is not only the ultimate goal, but it's being repeated every single time President Trump talks about Canada. So this is our sovereignty. We don't question it. We don't, laugh about it. This is something that must be respected at all times. So based on that, we'll take decisions, and we need to have options. Based on that, also, we worked on having a strong EU partnership on defense.
What the hell is going on? Trump jokes too much about becoming the 51st state, so we're going to just give up everything in North America and we're going to be a part of the EU. I genuinely, these liberals, when they talk, they gaslight me so hard. Sometimes I feel a little retarded. I'm just listening. I'm going, how does this make any sense? Sometimes I close my eyes. I'm like, okay, let me try to comprehend. Maybe let me just smack myself in the head 3, 4, 5 times, 400 or 500 times, bring my IQ down a few notches to that of a liberal, and just try to understand how that makes sense. How joining the EU makes sense over just being simply on good terms with America. I'm blown away. I do not understand it. Maybe somebody down in the comments can shed some light on this, but I feel like the consensus among conservatives is going to be this doesn't make any sense. This is pretty weird. But again, I don't want to speak for you. Let me know what your guys' thoughts and comments are down below. That is the end of the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.